Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So it is show week for me and I need to be in the theatre in about an hour and a half, but I am not letting this makeup and this hair go to waste without doing a video. So here we are. It's a bit of an impromptu one, but we're doing it anyway. And today I thought I'd do a video that I've kind of put off doing, and that is to talk about some of my unpopular bookish opinions. And the reason that I've kind of put off doing it is because it always feels like it's going to slant more negatively, and I always feel a bit uncomfy doing very negative videos. You know how much I went back and forth on talking about my 1-star books. And I also just find ranting about things to be a bit tiring by the end of it. This being said, I don't think I've got any particularly inflammatory, unpopular opinions. I mean, you can be the judge of that. So, you know, fingers crossed I don't annoy anybody with these opinions, and let's just get straight into them. My first unpopular opinion is about the design of certain books, and it is that I hate sprayed edges and deckled edges. I do not see the point of them. I just think they ruin books. And it especially annoys me that a lot of new releases now come in like these limited edition Waterstones or Blackwell's exclusives with sprayed edges. Like, they look pretty but are functionally useless to me. I just prefer general blank. Just leave the edges as they are. You don't need to colour them in. Not only do they get all over your hands, but I also feel like visually it actually kind of hinders my reading, especially black deckled edges. It just ends up with like a box around your reading, and I don't know why I find that so distracting to read in a way that I just don't with a normal book. It kind of feels visually like I'm being boxed in, and yeah, I just find it very distracting. Deckled edges I just find really awkward. I don't like that you can't really flip through a book as nicely as you would a normal one. They just look ratty and unfinished, and I don't like them. My next unpopular opinion I will caveat by saying that you can organise your books any way that you wish. People's libraries are very personal, and what works for me is not necessarily going to work for you. And I can completely understand why people do this for themselves, but for me, alphabetizing your books does nothing for me. I know a lot of people like to set their books out like they're in a bookshop or a library, but it's not how my brain works. I don't tend to think of a book by the author's surname. In contrast, I often think of a book by what it looks like visually. Like, when I think of Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, I think pink, which is why for me, rainbow shelves are actually great. I'm a very, very visual person, a very visual learner, and I think of books by their book covers a lot of the time. And this is why I get really frustrated when I see so many people slagging off rainbow shelves and saying that people who like rainbow shelves aren't serious readers. They only like the aesthetic appeal of books. They don't actually like books themselves. Another thing I'm going to get onto is what is wrong with liking aesthetic things when it comes to books. Like, genuinely, I start losing a bit of respect for people when they do slag off rainbow shelves, because I just think it's elitist and snobby. I also just don't think it's any of your business how other people choose to display their books. Rainbow shelves are fine, actually. And actually, at my parents' home, the way that I organise my books there is first by genre, and then it is my fiction, my general fiction, that I tend to put in a rainbow order, first by whether it's hardback or paperback, and then we let the rainbow flourish. And I think it looks great, and I think I should be allowed to think it looks great. I always hear people saying like, how are you able to find any of your books if it's not alphabetized and it's in rainbow? And I'm like, do you not remember the colour of your book? Do you not know what your books look like? Like, it's really confusing to me. But then again, more and more I'm learning that people often don't visualise things in their minds. I have a very visual memory. When I'm reading books, I am imagining whole scenes playing out. And if you say to me the title of a book, the book cover will just pop in there. So yeah, having a very visual, bright, colourful display for my books makes sense to my brain. It won't for everybody's, but it does for me. My next unpopular opinion is about book awards. Firstly, and this is one that I am always willing every year to eat my words on, but so far has not been the case, is that the Booker Prize is a bit overrated. I do not tend to enjoy most of the books on the Booker Prize, and especially once we get to the shortlist, my interest in it just completely takes a nosedive. Part of this opinion might be being burnt by The Mirror and the Light not making it to the shortlist of the 2020 Booker Prize, but yeah, I've slightly lost my respect for the Booker Prize ever since then. But as I say, every year I'm always interested and I'm always willing to be wrong about this, but I'm also just not generally a massive fan of very, very literary fiction, very experimental writing. It does absolutely nothing for me. But following on from that, year by year, the Women's Prize also not doing a whole lot for me. I used to follow the Women's Prize, not religiously, but I was always super interested, and especially this year, I've just not had very much interest in reading any of the books, which is surprising, especially considering that they've recently brought out the Non-Fiction Prize, which you'd think I'd be all over. But actually, from both lists, both long lists for the Non-Fiction and Fiction Prize, I've only actually read one book, and that was Young Queens, which is a book I would have read anyway, because it's about 16th century history. But yeah, more and more the Women's Prize is just not doing anything for me. But every year I live in hope to be proven wrong. My next opinion I know is going to upset some people, and that is that I relish cracking spines. It brings me so much joy. And the fact that I know that a few of you are going to be squirming in your seats about the fact that I just did that brings me immense joy. I'm so sorry. It just feels good. I like it. Are my books probably going to break in half? Probably, but they're my books. I can do what I want. I just generally do not understand how people can read books without cracking the spine. Like, do you have to read like that? Because that doesn't feel joyful to me. Or like, you have to read it like this and then turn to this page. Like, that is too much effort. No. Reading should be fun. Don't make it not fun. I have pre-warned you now, so if you are somebody who doesn't like cracking your spine, just know, don't lend a book to me. I can't promise how I'm going to treat it, so just don't give it to me at all. Next unpopular opinion is that yes, some movies are just better than their books. I'm thinking Catching Fire, I'm thinking Lord of the Rings, I'm thinking especially the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. That book was nowhere near as good as its movie. The movie actually added stakes to that book. Because you've got to condense like 300, 400, 500 pages into an hour and a half, maybe 2 hour movie, scriptwriters are just adept at cutting out the fat and just getting straight to the point in the way that some fiction authors are just not capable of doing. And a lot of the time, like narratively, a film will just be a lot better. Speaking of film adaptations, the 95 Pride and Prejudice and the 2005 are perfectly good. They are equal in my eyes. You are not better or more superior a fan because you like the 95. They are different mediums, they do different things, and I like both of them equally for different reasons. And nothing will wind me up more than people debating that one is better than the other. They are both great. Case closed, end off. Kind of leading on from my just dislike of experimental writing literary fiction is that for me, a book's writing is so far down on the list of criteria that I'm holding a book to. I'm always surprised at so many books that I really enjoy. I will then watch somebody review them and say that the writing was terrible, because I'm like, was it? I feel like I can pick up on bad writing, but maybe I'm just not picking up on average writing, and sometimes like overly lyrical, overly flowery language does really great on me. But yeah, most of the time I don't really notice. I'm quite happy to have a book that is very matter of fact and like, here is the plot, here are the characters, here you go. For me, I'm much more of a character-focused reader, a relationships-focused reader. It doesn't matter so much to me if you can spin like a beautiful lyrical sentence if your characters are really weak. Next unpopular opinion is about fantasy books. As much credit as I can give to Tolkien for the world that he created, what he did for the fantasy genre, I really disliked the reading experience of The Lord of the Rings. I found reading it to be really, really dull and not a patch on the films. I remember watching an Instagram story from Lena Norms where she was talking about Lord of the Rings and had a similar experience. And to paraphrase her, I think she said something like, she was expecting a Pop-Tart and what she got instead was Rosvita. And yeah, that is kind of what I got from The Lord of the Rings. I was expecting like fireworks and it was just bleh. And as I say, I can completely appreciate what he did for fantasy, but actually reading the books was not an enjoyable experience for me. This being said, was about 10 years ago that I read Lord of the Rings, and I always have my eye on the Andy Serkis audiobooks as maybe a new way into the series. I live in Oxford now, you know, it's Tolkien land here. So I always feel like I'm a bit remiss for not enjoying them as much as maybe I should. But also, this counts for Narnia, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, His Dark Materials, Percy Jackson. There are just a lot of very popular fantasy series that I just did not get on board with while reading them. And in the case of Lord of the Rings, Narnia and Hitchhikers, I enjoyed their films so much more. So clearly I'm enjoying the world, but there is something about the books themselves that is just not doing anything for me. And kind of linked into all of this, you know, actually now that I'm talking about it, maybe writing is important for me, because I typically tend to find that books that are written between the 1930s and 1960s just also tend to lose me. I just tend to not have a great time reading books that are written in that time period, as in the author themselves put pen to paper in the 1930s, 1960s. And I don't know why this is, but there's just a dryness about these books that I just don't enjoy. I can't get on board with. A lot of these books just feel very bland, very sterile. I never get any sort of emotional resonance from them. I don't tend to enjoy the characters. I don't know what it is. There's just never any sort of sparkle to these books, and I don't know why. My penultimate unpopular bookish opinion is that Jo March might be my least favourite of the March sisters, and Amy is my favourite. I'm a youngest child, what can I say? But especially having read the book, I think absolutely Aunt March was right not to invite Jo to Europe. Amy was the right choice. I think because in the books, Jo has very little character development going into adulthood. She stays the same, whereas Amy actually has to evolve and change and become a more mature person. I do think the older that I'm getting, the more sympathetic I am to Jo, but yeah, maybe it's because I'm very attached to Amy, and I always feel very sad for her when I see people disliking her and saying that she's the worst. I personally think she's great. Little sisters unite. And then my final unpopular bookish opinion, which I know is going to upset some people. Persuasion is my least favourite Jane Austen novel. Note, I do not say that it is bad, but of her 6 main novels, it is my least favourite. It is the one that every time that I try and read it, I'm just like, it's just not as good, is it? This is another opinion that I feel like other people try to explain to me why I'm wrong about this, that I'm not a mature reader because I don't like it, because it's her most mature book, it's her most nuanced, it's her most subtle, and I'm just like, But it's boring, isn't it? It's sombre, it's a bit dull, the plot barely gets going before it's finished. And Captain Wentworth, what a bitter, bitter man. Everyone talks about the letter scene and how romantic it is. I just feel like one letter scene should not be enough to make up for the rest of the book where he was awful. Persuasion is built around the idea that 8 years before the events of this novel, Wentworth and Anne were these great lovers, each other's one true loves, but we never get to see any of that. We barely get to see them interact in the book. We don't get any flashbacks to their past. So how am I meant to believe in their love when all we get is Anne pining and Wentworth being bitter? And yet I'm saying all this while noting that it's still a 4-star book for me. I do get why people like it. Just for me, if we really have to pull hairs at Jane Austen, that is where the rankings fall for me. I will always go back to it. I always want to get more out of it each time I go back to it. And at the moment, Pod and Prejudice are actually doing their episodes on Persuasion, so I hope to get more insights to it from them, because even a bad Jane Austen novel in my mind is a brilliant book. And I am being hyperbolic for the sake of the video, but yeah, that is my truth. So yeah, there we go. Those are my unpopular bookish opinions, and even while doing them, I've realised where some of them contradict each other. Maybe the writing style of a book is more important to me than I previously thought. I'm always up for hearing any differing opinions to my own. Please leave them in the comment section. But you know, please be nice. I'm not confrontational. I would not be able to respond to any argumentative comments. It's not in my nature. The fact that it's taken me 4 years to be able to do this video is testament to that. But I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to know about any unpopular bookish opinions of your own. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.